Thank you everyone for joining me. My name is Angela Peacock. I'm a subject of the film Medicating Normal. I was also trained as a therapist and a social worker, but I was harmed by psychiatric medication and the treatment that I got in the mental health care system. So that caused me to work on this team with Medicating Normal and bring awareness to some of the other subjects. I also volunteer doing outreach for the film, and I host conversations like this one. Today is our 34th interview. I can hardly believe it. And our guest is Avani Dilger. Did I say her last name right? Dilger, right? Okay. Let me tell you about Avani. We met her through a series of weird events where we submitted ourselves to an addiction conference. And through the addiction conference, there was this guy named Huey. What's his first name? Aaron Huey. Okay. Aaron Huey is a podcaster. And when we talked to him, he was like the most engaging dude, and he was just so vibrant and full of life. And we found out he works with teens in Colorado. And so after he watched the film and he interviewed me and one of the filmmakers for their podcast, he said, "Oh my God, you got to meet Avani. You have to meet Avani." So he connected us with Avani. We've done 2 screenings with Avani's group, Natural Highs, and we have a 3rd one coming up, which we'll talk about in a minute. So Avani is just like amazing. So on my way of being in the van, I also stopped by in Boulder, Colorado to say hi to Avani. And she was like, so in person, like just, I don't know how to explain it. Like she was a soul sister when I talked to her on the phone, but when I saw her in person and gave her a hug, it was like, I don't know, you just find these people and your life is forever changed by them. So Avani is one of these special people that I really want you to know. If you don't know her yet, I hope you'll never forget her after this interview. So without further ado, let me introduce her and then I'm going to give her the floor for a second. So Avani Dilger, LPC, I don't know all the other letters. She is the founder and executive director of Natural Highs, Healthy Alternatives to Drugs and Alcohol. She's also a substance abuse counselor and a trauma therapist. Avani, say hello to everyone.
Hi, Angie. It's so wonderful to be back with you. We miss you here. We want you close to us. So it's so wonderful that we have a chance to talk today.
Yeah. So let's jump into let me tell you the mission of Natural Highs. Natural Highs, Healthy Alternatives to Drugs and Alcohol is an interactive, strengths-based prevention, intervention, peer mentor program that is co-created by teens to empower teens and their communities around healthy lifestyle choices and creating a positive peer culture. Their mission is to empower teens and adults to become inspired leaders around healthy lifestyle choices and to work for positive change and social justice, especially around substance abuse and mental health issues in their communities. They also have drugs and alcohol events, like through workshops, groups, presentations, sober events. I know you've done a sober rave, which like, oh my God, I wish I could attend that. And entrepreneur and leadership opportunities for teens. The goal of their program is for teens to learn about substance abuse and mental health, discover healthy alternatives, support each other through healthy choices, and take on leadership roles to positively impact teens and adults in their community. Oh, that I think I just said it all. So can you tell us a little bit like what brought you to this work? What interests you in the addiction world and teen mental health and teens in general? How did you get here?
So I grew up in Germany, and when I was a young person, 2 of my friends died in connection with substance use and mental health. And, as a young person, that left me so upset and so furious that literally in that moment, I dedicated my life to wanting to change this, wanting to change the stigma, wanting to help people understand like what is actually going on with people. Because of course, my friends didn't fit the stigma at all. They were, of course, wonderful people, just like everybody. And it left me so enraged that there's no more understanding in our culture around these issues. And so that was, my beginning to try to study everything I could, figure out everything I could. And then I received a grant from the German government to come to the US to study with the pioneers in somatic psychology. Because really that was the first time that psychology was actually put on the foundation of neuroscience. And I learned things there in grad school that I feel needs to be available to everybody and not just people, with privilege. And I worked initially in the US in like the traditional contexts, here in the Boulder County Jail. and in the traditional mental health and substance abuse treatment context. And I could just see, what's working and what's not working. And I felt we need to do better. We need to be more engaging. We need to create environments that people actually want to be part of and feel inspired about getting help and receiving support. And so that made me start a nonprofit organization where we can work so much more grassroots and really challenge the whole paradigm around mental health and hierarchies and, who is the client, who is the expert, really challenging all of that and working in a very different way to showing people that, people who have challenges around mental health and substance abuse, they carry a lot of wisdom and they carry a lot of sensitivity around these issues. And they really should be the ones, being the leaders in our community, educating others around that. So that's how we work.
Oh, I love it. So that what you were saying reminded me of your class that I took called Anxiety is My Superpower. Can you tell people, because the reason I just loved it so much was because you're giving the education to the teens that they're not getting. So if you have these scary feelings and these emotions, and right now the current paradigm is you go to the doctor, you tell someone that you need help, you're kind of like flipping that backwards, where you're educating people how to sit with their emotion, feel it. What does it mean? So can you take us through like anxiety is your superpower and kind of what you do with Natural Highs?
Yeah, so the reason we started this initiative, How to Turn Anxiety into Your Superpower, is because I learned things in graduate school that show that anxiety is not a mental health disorder, but that it is a symptom of overwhelm and actually a healthy reaction. It's like an engine light in our system, and what the current mental health system is doing, it is knocking out the engine light, where nobody in their car would knock out the engine light, right? We would want the engine light because it tells us what needs attention. And so I learned things where I was like, wait a second, why are we not teaching this in every elementary school, every middle school, every high school, to every parent? It would empower people to understand that there's nothing wrong with them. That if you currently experience anxiety, it means you are a sensitive, caring human being, and the way we start our presentations is I ask people, I say, who is experiencing anxiety right now? And you can imagine, right? Almost everybody's hands go up. And I say, look around. Did you know that almost everybody is, and people are like, no, I thought it was me, and we're like, okay, let us show you the neuroscience of anxiety to show you that it is a very healthy reaction. And the problem, the reason it's so difficult to manage is because all of that reaction was designed in our nervous system in the Stone Age over the last 2 million years. And it's very perfect for the Stone Age. It's kind of hard to manage in this world right now because there's a real disconnect. And so we teach people about that disconnect and how they can channel this energy that gets kicked up in anxiety and also in trauma, how to channel the energy in a productive way, because the energy is not bad. It's actually your most precious life force that your body gives you to manage. But, all the reflexes were really designed, fight, flight, freeze for the Stone Age, not so much in the modern world. So it's quite sophisticated how to channel that. And we develop techniques, for teens and parents and professionals, how to do that. And so we just think this knowledge needs to be in the hands of everybody. It's not okay that you still have to pay, $50,000, $100,000 to get that knowledge in graduate school. It's like, we need to do better than that.
Yeah. So you kind of hinted around some things that you see wrong with the mental health system and like things that change them. So can you tell me some of the things that you think from your perspective that we're doing wrong, maybe especially with teens?
Yeah, I think it becomes more and more obvious that the way we are working in mental health is not working. I work in a high school where we probably have more mental health services than any other high school. And our kids are not getting better. You know, I mean, over the years, I watched that. Are our kids getting better? No, they're not. You know, now students can tell me the 5 diagnoses they have received and the 5 medications they're on. Are they doing better? No, they're not. They're actually worse. And so I think one of the big misunderstandings is that symptoms like anxiety or depression, or even symptoms like OCD or ADD, we know now they are not, you know, disorders that you are born with. I have worked as a therapist with people with the most excruciating symptoms for over 20 years. I cannot even remember a single person who was born with a chemical imbalance. When you listen to the histories of people who carry symptoms, there are always issues around, you know, trauma, overwhelm, emotional issues. And so we need to understand the neuroscience of how does the brain and our nervous system react to trauma and overwhelm? How does it cause these symptoms? And what needs to happen for healing? So not just managing the symptoms, you know, with whatever medications or therapy, but actually helping a brain move out of the freeze response that happens with trauma so that people can resolve it and be healthy again and resilient, and don't need to end up managing these symptoms for the rest of their lives.
So you're talking about like, how do you work with those states? So I'm sure the people in our audience are curious. So what are some things that help people move through that overwhelm or that OCD, or, you know, without managing symptoms only, like actually getting to the root and helping it move through your system?
So the experience is on a spectrum, right? And the spectrum, how I see it, is for stress, symptoms like anxiety, depression, and then very serious trauma. With very debilitating PTSD, right? And when you look at most mental health symptoms are on that spectrum of severity. And people on this spectrum need different kinds of support. So in my experience, most people on that spectrum really benefit just from the neuroscience education. So I have worked here in a high school in Boulder where the school principal asked me to educate the whole school community on trauma and on brain spotting, right? So what does trauma do? And then how to treat it, how to resolve it. In most people, kids and parents and adults alike, when they understand the neuroscience of what causes their anxiety and depression, and we teach them the techniques, how to channel the energy, in most people, that's enough, right? They can learn how to do that. And then they can work with their panic attacks, they can work with their anxiety, and their depression gets better, right? Now, in people with the most severe trauma, you know, there is a process in the brain when the trauma is so severe, we go into a freeze response for protection. And if the trauma is severe enough, there are places you cannot get yourself out of this by yourself, where you have to work with a trauma therapist who either does brain spotting or EMDR, so knows the neuroscience of how to unlock a brain that got stuck in the freeze response, and then help the person resolve that, right? So depending on severity, people can learn to do it by themselves or they need help, especially initially, right? But in my experience, a lot of people, many more than we think, can really learn how to do that and can help themselves, you know?
Yeah, it's so important. We always rely on professionals to do it when there's just skills, especially prevention. I feel like your program really prevents things from happening. You know, we're so used to, you know, reacting to a suicide, and like now all the kids around them need counseling, but it's like, well, what was happening in that kid's life 2 years ago? Like, how did they, you know, we were missing the boat on that. So another thing about your program that I really think is cool is that you kind of emphasize there's states in your mind, in your consciousness, that people want to take drugs for to reach that state. So for instance, like in our community, benzodiazepines make you feel relaxed. LSD or ketamine might make you disassociate and make you really happy. And MDMA makes you feel loving. But in your program, you kind of teach teens you can reach those states without a drug. So can you talk about that?
That's my favorite topic to talk about.
Awesome.
So, once you study the neuroscience of substances, like each substance in particular, it is absolutely fascinating because every substance really manipulates a particular neurotransmitter system and is really usually a copy of a neurotransmitter we naturally have. So when you think about it, alcohol, for example, right? Alcohol manipulates a neurotransmitter system called GABA. Now, when you study, okay, if alcohol, or marijuana or cocaine or heroin is a substitute, is a copy, is manipulating a system that we really naturally have, then the question is, how can I mobilize my own system, right? Because you can study with every drug. For example, the reason alcohol is so often used in our culture is because the GABA system that it manipulates is really an incredibly beautiful neurotransmitter system that we need to feel relaxed and safe and comfortable in our own skin. I mean, look at that, right? The absence of that in our culture, to feel comfortable, to feel relaxed, to feel safe, to feel comfortable in our own skin. That, of course, people, because we lack that so much in a natural way, people go for the substitute. People go for alcohol or benzodiazepines. The same thing around THC, right? THC is a copy of a neurotransmitter we naturally have, which, who is teaching that? Nobody, because nobody can make money off of that, right? And so we teach that because we're a nonprofit. We want to have people have that knowledge. So the neurotransmitter that THC copies is called anandamide. Anandamide is one of the neurotransmitters we need after activity to calm us down. It's our natural chill out neurotransmitter. We also need it to calm ourselves down during stress or overwhelm or conflict. And again, right, look at our culture of how seriously we need that capacity. And then, of course, people go for the shortcut. They go for the substitute because you can just buy it and there's $1 billion industry advertising it to you, right?
Yeah.
And so we teach teens and adults, what are you actually trying to substitute for? What is the original you already have? And how can you mobilize? Because with every neurotransmitter, you can study, what do I need to eat to make more of it? What do I need to do to release it, right? And so that becomes kind of our thing in our program, that we get people excited about the real thing. We say there's no substitute for the real thing, and including drugs like psychedelics, right? People are like, well, wait a second, what's the real thing to LSD, right? Well, most people don't know that LSD is a very, very exact copy of serotonin that we naturally have. If we wouldn't have the originals, drugs couldn't even work in our system. We need the receptors for these drugs, and really the drugs are just the copies. And we want to start the interest and the excitement about the originals, and create activities that really help people experience the original neurotransmitters that we're made for.
Yeah, I saw a video, I think it was in one of your classes. Okay, just transparency, I sign up for anything that Avani has, and sometimes she sends me the link so I can join because I just love it so much. It's like, if I were practicing and I was in the world, I would probably be a twin of Avani. It's full of transparency. Okay, so anyway, I saw a video in one of your talks where you had two teens running with a third teen, and the third teen was blindfolded. So they ran across this parking lot and the teen couldn't see, and they were just carrying him. And so I thought to myself, wow, that's like a replication of like meth or cocaine. Cause like you have this exhilarating feeling of like, just, speed, but you can't see where you're going. So it creates something in the body. So can you maybe give us a few more examples of like ways to reach these certain states that different drugs would do, but that we could do on our own without the drug?
Yeah, so because our program is co-created with teens, right? We go with what people are interested in, what teens are interested in, and adults are interested in. And so, people say, well, what about DMT? What about, altered states? And so we invented the blind run that you just mentioned, because you can study, right? When you when you blindfold a human being and you run at full speed, stuff happens in the brain, especially in the Stone Age part of the brain. So it's a very safe but very high risk experience in the brain. And that activity releases DMT that is really reserved for us to release when we are born, when we die, and when we go into altered states, for example, with dreaming. So we do these really crazy activities like blindfolded runs or blindfolded dancing, so that you can have an experience of what our amazing consciousness is able to do, it without anything you need to buy, without any drug you need to buy. You can just do it. And you can imagine how super empowering this is for people to recognize that empowerment and to recognize that ability of like, wow. So yeah, we create lots of those activities. So we look for activities that release GABA. So for example, we work with a technique in our program that's called Reiki energy healing. It is a Japanese form of energy healing where you put your hands on another person, you get initiated how to channel this energy. And it's a very, very profound experience with GABA, right? With feeling safe, with feeling held. So we do a lot of that in our program. We do a technique called AcuDetox. That is an acupuncture treatment that releases very powerful neurotransmitters like endorphins. So it can really help people who got addicted to opiates, including, heroin, but also pain medication, or that got addicted to self-harming, or that got addicted to any kind of disordered eating. Because all of those addictions, are a manipulation of our own endorphin system. And so, we create healthy ways how you can actually help your own endorphin system get stimulated, but in a healthy way, in a non-addictive way. And for a lot of people who go through our program, it's the first time they actually feel a sense of hope, because they feel a sense, oh, wow, there's actually something out there that is working, that is giving me a sense of relief. And that really engages people to then want to do more, like eat healthier, take care of themselves, right? So it's like, it's the other way around. I think we need to first give people a real experience of you can do stuff to get better. And then, for people to stay in for like, okay, I really want to do this. I really want to heal myself.
Love that. The other thing I was thinking while you were talking about kind of addiction being a reaction to life circumstances, to the overwhelm in our lives. To me, that's one of the most, what's the word? Like, I don't know, we're so used to using the word stigmatizing, but this feels the opposite of that, that addiction is really people's way of coping with the overwhelm they feel in their lives. It's not that they're a bad person. It's not that they're a drug addict and those dirty people and they doctor shop and, all that stuff. Like, no, our nervous system is reacting to things in our world, whether it be anxiety with the check engine light on, or I'm going to drink alcohol to calm down because I have a stressful life. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, wherever we go, and to teach people neuroscience about substance use or mental health, we say, if you have ever been drawn to a substance, there is an intelligence behind that, whether that is nicotine or whether that is heroin. And, people fall from the chair. They're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean intelligence behind me wanting to do heroin? I'm like, well, yeah, because you're playing brain chemistry. You figured out a way to manipulate your brain chemistry. And you know what? There is an intelligence in that. You were very particular in what you were trying to achieve. Would you like us to show you what you were actually trying to do? And people are like, yeah. And we're like, well, you tried to manipulate your opiate system, your endorphin system, or you try to manipulate your anandamide system, do you want to know how to release these neurotransmitters in a healthy way and how to heal that system? And people are extremely interested, so the whole stigma that we put on people, that they don't want to get into treatment, that they don't want help, that they're in denial, is not true. I mean, I work with people right now who are in the justice system, who are forced to work with us, and the moment they come to our groups, they are extremely motivated to learn neuroscience. And they have never been taught any of that in the traditional treatment approaches, and so we think that people are extremely motivated. I mean, everybody who's ever done a drug is extremely motivated to do something to create change, right? And we just say, hey, look, we're going to show you what it does when you do it with a copy. And we don't tell people not to do drugs. We don't judge whatever people do. We just show people the neuroscience and we say, so what do you think? And people say, this is stupid. Like, it's stupid for me to put in the drug, right? Because it actually destroys my neurotransmitter system that I actually want, right? So, I mean, that's the tragedy about using substances, is because it hurts our favorite neurotransmitters. And then people get extremely interested. Well, how can I, heal and rebalance my own endorphin system or my own anandamide system? What kind of food, what kind of activities, like what do I need to do? And so, yeah, I think that's an approach that we have seen working for the last 16 years, really very much.
And that's a good point, because I think I read a study about telling someone that addiction is the disease and that you'll never recover actually perpetuates the problem. Do you know what I mean? So when you're giving these people the tools that make sense to them, like, oh, I was trying to cope and there was intelligence in my body that was trying to help me self-regulate, because that's what they're doing. I need to regulate this off-balance system and find something that makes me feel better. And some people find it's social media, or it's sex, or it's heroin. And it's kind of all the same thing. We're all just trying to feel better with what we have, and whatever's easiest and closest can be the thing,
I mean, I think there's a confusion around the disease model, right? I think it needs to be understood historically, because historically, the fact that, people said addiction is a disease and not moral failure, or to say mental illness is a disease and not moral failure, at some point in history, it was progress. It was better, right? The problem is just, it's not true. And so I know that people are conflicted about letting the disease model go, because of course they know at some point it helped with the stigma. It was progress. It's just, we need to move on into the new, understanding that it's not a disease. It's a healthy reaction in our nervous system, in our brain. It's how our body works. And now we can just move on and, learn more, more differentiated. It's not a disease. It is a imbalance that is literally a physiological imbalance in the brain, but it is not, people are not born with that. It's typically caused by trauma, by emotional overwhelm, and by other life factors that need attention, right? And that we need to get people treatment for.
And when you say it's not a disease, people hear it's a choice. And that's like, no, that's not what we mean. We're saying it's not a disease. It's not a choice. It's not a moral failing, but it is a reaction to your life and an easy way to self-regulate. And there's lots of other things involved. It's just not so simple, but I totally agree with you. I got in the most trouble I got in graduate school. It was me debating this topic. When I said, I'm just going to wrap myself out. Why not? I said to the teacher, he was talking about addiction as a disease. I said, by what mechanism does your disease go into remission the second you walk into a rehab center? That doesn't make sense to me. Your disease just goes away. Like, doesn't do that with diabetes. Like, you have to take something, like it did not make sense to me. So it feels like a metaphor. It's easy for people to understand that, okay, maybe I don't have control over my use of a chemical and I need help for that. but to say it's a disease, it's like disempowering. I don't know, just
yeah. And and again, right, there's a misunderstanding that yes, it is a physiological imbalance in your brain that is caused by either substance use or trauma or various factors. But the fact that it is a physiological imbalance doesn't mean it is a lifelong disease that will never change, right? So again, we need to just get much more sophisticated, much more differentiated around these issues. And what we see is that, people, they don't trust teens or people in the justice system with that high level of neuroscience. Our experience is the exact opposite. Teens and marginalized people and people in hard places, they want very advanced neuroscience. That is the material that is interesting to people because they want to be treated as, smart, capable human beings, which they are. And so that's what we hear as one of the biggest complaints from teens is that they never got that level of knowledge. Kids say to us, well, we were just told not to do drugs. We were never shown why not to do drugs, like in a really sophisticated way. And so that's why we teach very sophisticated neuroscience all the way down to middle school,
Yeah, I love that. So somebody in the audience has a question. It says, with natural highs, is sobriety presented as the only way? What about harm reduction for people who still want or choose to use drugs or who decide for themselves that recreational intermittent drug use might complement their life in some way?
Yeah. So we do not judge anybody on wherever they are on the spectrum, right? So we invite anybody to attend natural highs programs wherever they are, whether they have never used a substance or whether they are currently using substances, whether they don't even want to quit using substances. Everybody is welcome to be part of our program. Now, when we hold classes in person, we ask that people in that moment are not under the influence because we have a lot of people who use our spaces as safe spaces. So we ask people to respect that, to create a safe space for everybody. And, obviously, if somebody's intoxicated, it can be really triggering to people. But we are not judging people or sorting people. This is the other problem that we see in a lot of traditional treatment contexts is people get sorted based on severity. And we feel that that's highly stigmatizing and also does not really bring people in a context that is most supportive. And so we don't do that. We have in our classes the whole spectrum of people because everybody carries certain wisdom. Like we live in a culture right now in Boulder where a lot of teens feel that it's not cool to not use substances, to be sober. And we say, that's very cool. If you live your life without substances, you are cool, right? But we have to make that, explicit. So that's why we're not sorting people. We're not judging people. We welcome everybody to participate.
Like that. So let's swing back to teen mental health and addiction in general. So this might sound really bad the way I'm going to say it, but there seems to be like a cultural phenomenon. It's in teens and adults, but almost like the marketing messages of the pharmaceutical company has like intercepted our life in such a way that, like you said at the beginning, kids present with, I have bipolar, borderline, and I'm addicted to, and I'm on 5 meds and I see my therapist twice a week. And it feels like it becomes their identity. And it happened to me, which is why I know something about it, that like my whole life revolved around being a patient and being broken and having things wrong with me and then telling someone about that. So do you have any thoughts about like what's happening in the teen culture with meds and diagnoses and labels? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have lots of ideas about that. So, and I don't think it's just in the teen culture. I think it's in our general culture, because a lot of things are put on teens that actually are relevant for people all ages. I believe it's because there's nothing else. We don't offer people other identities. We don't offer people other options. So this is one of the reasons we are not offering treatment in our program. We don't call it treatment. We don't do treatment. We call it a peer mentor and leadership program. So when I run classes for probation, instead of treatment, like they serve, in the same purpose, but we welcome people and we say, oh, by the way, this is not treatment. You're not a client. This is not treatment. You are in a peer mentor and leadership program, and we want you to do this first round to learn and then be on the team the next round. And you cannot even imagine the reaction of people. They're like, what? Like, what are you talking about, right? What do you mean a peer mentor? Like, what do you mean a leader? Like, I'm here because I got forced to do this for treatment. I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. We are doing a different thing because we think that if you have been struggling with severe substance use and mental health issues, you have tremendous wisdom that would really serve other people. And you can see the identity shift, right? Like, just like, what? And we see that once that is a possibility, right? This is presented to people, then suddenly people have choices. And they're like, oh, do I rather want to be the client, with the offender? Or do I want to be the peer mentor that is actually helping other people? So I think it's a question of what we put in front of people. Obviously, there is billion-dollar interests behind these identities of diagnoses and meds. Well, or drug use, right? Alcohol, marijuana, billion-dollar industries. So of course there are forces pushing these identities on people. And we think it's a lack of choice, a lack of knowledge, a lack of possibility. We see it, and we do a podcast called This Badass Sober Life. And I did an interview with a woman, Morgan, who came to us with probably one of the most severe issues of substance abuse, trauma, mental health. And she describes in the interview that I did with her why none of the traditional treatment approaches worked for her and why natural highs worked for her to turn her life around. She's one of our rock star peer mentors right now. And she talks in detail exactly why that has helped her, that identity shift, changing from I'm messed up, I'm broken, to, oh, somebody thinks I have something to offer. I presented with her on the state level for her as a teacher, right? So we can do that. We can support people to shift that identity.
That's such a interesting thing I've never thought about, because last summer I freelanced for like 2 months at an addiction treatment center in Southern California, where, I mean, it's 40 grand just to walk in the door, and the thing I noticed that struck me the most, the very first day that I went there, all the clients were sitting on the couch in a circle, and all of them looked like, I'm in trouble, I'm beat down, I'm tired. But it was like this like oppressive environment, like, I'm just here because I have to be, because my family is pissed off at me and they paid for me to get here, or my probation off, you know what I mean? And then you're paying all this money, and now I'm on my second month because the first month didn't work and I relapsed. It was just like so depressing. And I'm like, how people can't heal in that environment? They just can't. So I really like the fact that you give people another choice. Like, maybe you're not this bad person who was choosing to use drugs and you got in trouble. That's the only reason is because you got caught and now you got to go through treatment, and now you're just so fucked up, excuse my language, but that's the language they use. You have to go through this horrible program, but you're saying, no, you're a leader. Your body was intelligent. It was looking for something to help you. It worked for a while. Maybe there's other choices that can work, or maybe harm reduction can work better or something. I love that. It's
genius. So we were just invited to go into a treatment setting like that, right? Same thing, right? A circle of women, everybody's down. Everybody introduces themselves with, this is my name. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah. And, we go in, we set up our circle of yerba mate gourds, and we bring our herbal apothecary, with all of our healthy herbs to make you feel better. We bring the AccuDetox. I mean, literally within an hour, these women were like at the edge of their seat, like, how can I get trained? How can I do that? Like, where can I learn more about herbs? How can I, I mean, like that, right? It is a question of giving people other options. Our experience in the last 16 years is the moment you give people healthy options, they will choose them. You know, that's the other stigma that is put on people, that they're not interested, that they don't want any other options, is not true. People are desperate for options. You know, we just don't give it to people, because
But
what do we give people? Just like things that are, you know, sold and that create a lot of profit, you know?
yeah, but and that's the thing, because I just went to graduate school 2 years ago, and if things are not evidence-based, then they don't count. But nobody's going to pay for evidence of acupuncture. There's some evidence out there. Some people would say it's placebo. You know what I mean? Like, so I always question evidence-based for who? Because a lot of the evidence that you read in mental health is really for very homogenous, cleaned samples. For instance, like people who just have mild depression, they don't have addiction problems, they're not hearing voices, they're not like living on the street with severe socioeconomic. These are people that volunteer for research at higher academic centers, so they might not have severe problems. So when this evidence-based treatments go out in the real world on real people who are living on the street, who are injecting heroin and have acne all over their face and no clean clothes for 14 days, like this, it doesn't work. So it's like the evidence base is for who, and who is getting benefit from that. And we don't learn that either. We don't learn how to like read science or learn about science. So the general public just goes with the narrative, which is go seek help, go to the treatment center, get your meds, here's your diagnosis, see you later.
Yeah. So for example, AccuDetox is a great example for that, right? So we have 50 years of research and experience showing that it is incredibly beneficial for people with substance use issues and mental health issues. Does anybody know about that? No, because there is not $1 billion industry pushing, research, publications. It's just not there. And so that's why people are like, oh, it doesn't have evidence. It has tons of evidence, but it doesn't count because it's not getting into the journals. It's not getting into the circles where, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars would get you. So we have to educate people, both young people and people all ages, to be more critical thinkers around, who is getting the research, how much does the research cost, how do you get published in these circles. And we struggle with the same in our program, and we have tremendous success in our program. So in our evaluations, over 80% of all of our teens that participate in Natural Highs say after a 10-week workshop that they either reduced or quit their substance use. Over 80%, and that has been consistent over 10 years. I mean, that is a success rate that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Are we an evidence-based practice? No. We should be, right? We have the evidence. Do we have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get on the list of evidence-based? No, we don't. So that's why we need to educate people to ask these kinds of questions.
Yeah. Someone made a comment. This is a really good mention. There's a documentary called The Business of Recovery, and it talks about like how the recovery industry kind of like keeps itself going. And it's when those people don't heal, like I mentioned earlier, if you pay $40,000 and you don't get better in 30 days and you have to go through the program in 6 months, it's almost that, and it might not be even conscious. I don't think these people are harming people on purpose. They believe in a model that doesn't work, right? But people are not getting better. People continue to go to rehab. I mean, I went to rehab myself 4 times for, prescription drugs, 15 years ago. I didn't feel better. I never felt better. Like, if anything, I felt like I was in trouble all the time. But anyway, so they have a 5% success rate, according to the film, The Business of Recovery. So I'm sure Nicole will put that in the comments, but definitely a documentary you should watch.
Yeah, I recommend that to parents, right, who think about treatment for their children. I ask them to watch that documentary. I think it's called The Business of Rehab. So we have to check the correct title, but it's incredible. I mean, it's a horror movie, really, about how treatment has been taken over by business and profit interests. That's why I think people need to actually look for nonprofit organizations, because I would be at this point, unfortunately, highly suspicious of for-profit treatment programs. There are some really great people out there, but you need to really look a little bit behind the scenes, because anytime there is that much profit involved, it's like, then what do people care about, right? So it's very hard for parents to get good information, so that's why this is so important. The work that you do, Angie, is to create these movements, right? We need to literally take it back, the power back, and create the movements around mental health and substance abuse that really gets help to people without money interests.
Yeah. So on the subject of teens, I don't know. I did an internship and I saw a few teens in my practice and I just love them. I don't know. I feel like, and maybe I'm just weird. I don't know. This could totally be that I'm just weird. I just feel like teens are very misunderstood and they're not treated like the beautiful human beings that they are. And we kind of talk over them. We talk around them. We have secrets about them. We kind of ignore them as a society. We kind of like let them figure it out. Parents are busy working just to keep the bills and it's not their fault. That's the way our systems are built. So from your perspective, what do you think teens need the most?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I think teens are amazing people, and sometimes people ask me like, what's your secret? Why are you so good working with teens? Like, what do you do? And I say, actually, I don't make a difference. We treat teens the same way as anybody else. We do not make a difference at all. Because that's, I think, one of the problems, that people treat teens as this separate group and have lots of, judgment and stigma on teens that is completely unfounded. So there was a very interesting piece of research done by an anthropologist named Chip Clark, and he did in-depth interviews with teens about their experience in this culture. And the book that he published is called Hurt, like being hurt, right? Because he says the gist of what he heard from teens is that they feel completely abandoned by adults. And the reason they're so peer oriented is because the adults are not there. They're totally absent. In our program, we see that teens desperately want to be connected to adults and want to be seen and witnessed and affirmed, like seen for who they are by adults. So much, right? So that is a totally wrong perception on teens, that they don't want to have anything to do with adults. We see the total opposite. And so, I think that would be a good start.
Made me tear up because I just thought back to my own teen years and that's exactly how I felt, that the parents in my life, the adults in my life, I was trying everything I could to make them proud of me. Like I would play all the sports, I was in all the clubs, and I was just like, please see me. Like, do you see me? And then when they didn't see me and I realized they weren't, is when, I just quit everything. And it's just so sad. It just, oh my God. So thank you for that validation moment. I didn't really need, but no, I think you're absolutely right. And even in my own experiences with working with teens, it's like the teen is smoking marijuana because they're reacting to their home life because their parents are yelling all day. And every time the teen would tell the parent something, they run and tell all the relatives. And so then they don't feel safe in their own home. So of course they're going to be a delinquent and running on the street and smoke marijuana because they want to feel like they belong to something and their friends give them that feeling. And then they get that relaxation from the drugs that they're taking, It just all makes so much sense. It's not, I think we just complicate things, that you have a chemical imbalance, you have a disease, there's a pill to fix that and you'll be fine. And it just look at where it's got us.
Yeah, and I do the timelines with the teens. So I work with teens in my private practice who are like on the very severe end with mental health problems, substance use problems, all kinds of problems, right? And on 5 meds and 5 diagnoses and all of that. And I say, okay, let's just go back here. Let's just look at the timeline. How did this all start, right? Yeah. Well, I went through this really painful breakup when I was 15 years old. And then what happened? Well, then, my mom brought me to the psychiatrist and I got my first prescription for antidepressants. I'm like, do you understand that in that moment, that's not depression. Like you don't have depression you're born with. You had an emotional reaction to something painful.
Yeah.
And that, of course, then that sets in motion lots of other consequences, right? That make it worse and worse and worse. I mean, what it comes down to, I think, because it's the parents are also not at fault. I mean, they're doing the best they can. I think what we're seeing is a profound disconnect. So it's a very interesting thing. We had a very profound experience in our community. We started parent classes, right? So classes for parents who were very challenged with a teen with substance use issues. And we had two women activists who were parents who had gone through hell themselves with their own children with these issues. And then they started this incredible parent program. And so parents got together, right, who dealt with the same challenges. And I tell you, that set something in motion where for the first time, these parents could start letting go of the stigma on themselves and on their children by seeing in the mirror of the other parents, we're not the bad guys. We didn't fuck up. It's just hard. And now we're going to support each other.
Wow.
And that has ripple effects, right? So these parents are now building the village that we lost.
Wow.
So I feel like that's a very profound thing, and for everybody who's listening, that will be a good start for us to create the village for us, right? For parents, for the teens, some of these like healthy, connections that go beyond just me and my kid or me and my parent. That's not going to work. We can't be everything for our teenage child. We can't be everything for our one parent or two parents. We need a village of caring people, caring young people, meaningful things to do. And then we see a lot of good things can ripple from that.
I love that. Oh, so we're running out of time. I know I could talk to you for 3 hours or all day or all week, but so I want to reach to another parent question. I'm just thinking about the parents that we've met throughout the screening of the film, and there's been so many, and some of them are very close to my heart and are listening right now. I know that for sure. So one of the parents I'm thinking of that I just visited in Montana, he told me, like, Angie, we didn't have another choice. We just thought, my son is in crisis. You take him to the emergency room. That's what you do. They don't give us another choice. Then I'm thinking of another parent who right now their kid is in a treatment center. I just met them another place, and how do I say, I'm trying to say this with like protecting their anonymity, just that I was like, listen, you have to get your kid out of there. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. It's just, you got to get them out of there and taper them off the meds and help them figure out another way. There's another way. So what advice do you have for like parents where there's, things have climaxed, they're in the middle of a crisis, they don't have choices, they, even family pressure saying, take your kid to the hospital, put them in the hospital, get them on meds. Like, what is your advice to parents?
I mean, I work with situations like that here. That's what I do. So I'm very aware of this situation, right? So I would say safety is always first. Like, if you are concerned for your safety, you have to call 911. You have to get your kid into a safe environment. Now, there are now communities like our community. We have now a space, it's called the living room, where people can go before going to the hospital, right? It's like a crisis place that looks like a living room that has staff where people can just chill out and come back to their senses. I think every community needs that, right? So that we have options, that the hospital is not the only option, that there is like a step in between for support, right? So I would advocate, I would say to everybody, advocate for that in your community, that you need that, or that you have a way before you call the police, you call a mental health team, but you know that they're, good people. So I know that's very overwhelming to parents once they're there, but that would be a good thing to, advocate in your community. And then I would say, stay close to this kind of information and to these movements. I welcome anybody to sign up for our emails on naturalhighs.org. We run parent nights on turn anxiety into your superpower, learn about the neuroscience of anxiety, depression, trauma, and learn the strategies of what to do. You might have to do earlier, right? Before it's a full-blown crisis, but at least you have an understanding of what is actually going on. So I would say stay very close, to Angie, what you're doing with Medicating Normal and the amazing resources you are building on your website, because it's overwhelming for people to start looking when they're in crisis. You need to know the hubs, right? And I know you want to be one of these hubs. We want to be one of these hubs. We have tons of resources on our website. Everybody is welcome to sign up for our emails and be part of our community and learn from our resources. And our dream is to bring these resources to more communities. I definitely would say, if you are in crisis and you need a mental health therapist, at least look for somebody who's trauma trained, who does brain spotting, who does EMDR, who's not just old school, medication only approach, but that has a little bit more holistic. I recommend to people find a holistic psychiatrist. That's what they're called now. People who have a little bit more neuroscience understanding. Those would kind of be my ideas.
That's really good advice. There's one more question I think I should ask you before we let you go, from the audience. It says, do you see natural highs? Wait, no, let me back up. There's a lot of good questions, but okay. A lot of therapists will say that parents drop their kids off and expect the therapist will just fix them. But many therapists say once they talk to the teen that it's the parents that need the help. Do you experience this in your experience doing the work that you do?
Yeah, but I do not think it's the parents' fault. I think that was the message, right? There's a disorder and you just have to medicate it and your child will be fixed. I mean, are we now blaming parents that they believe the authority that taught them that, right? I mean, that's not okay. So no, it's not a mental health disorder that your child was born with and that needs to be fixed with medication. It's usually a emotional situation or a trauma situation that really the whole family needs to get support with. And I always would say to parents, get support for yourself. You cannot be a strong parent if you are completely burned out by the situation, by the crisis yourself, right? So I would say, look for those kinds of parent education groups or supports. Ask for them, ask in your school to organize something like that. We go into schools and we run Turn Anxiety into Your Superpower. And now with, online, we can do that for about any school community. I would say be that engaged parent who goes to the school and says, we need that. We need that kind of support. Here is the contact this person, Avani at Natural Highs. They do these parent education nights to support parents around understanding trauma and resilience. We want that, right? We had schools where people raised funds to have us come in and do that, right? I mean, you can do that as a parent. I think we all need to become activists. We are literally up against billions of dollars of profit interests. And if we don't want to give up that power to money interests, we have to become activists, parent activists, teen activists, professional activists. We have to take our power back.
Let's be the change you want to see.
Yeah. There's nobody saving us, okay? We need to do it ourselves.
We have to do it. Okay, so I'll just read are you in a hurry to get off?
No.
Okay, perfect. Let me just read a couple more. One says, I love the idea of a living room. Oftentimes sending someone to a hospital during crisis can be disastrous to their future well-being. That's a good comment. Another one is,
I want to say something to that.
Yeah.
Look up, and maybe Angie, we can find that and put it in the link. Look up the Living Room Mental Health Partners, Boulder, Colorado. And then, look how they do that, right? And copy that and go to your local mental health provider and say, this is what they're doing. Can we do something like that? Can we have something like that? There are models now, right? There are communities who are doing that. And so you don't need to invent that from scratch. You can use that as a template.
Yeah. Another one is, do you see natural highs as a template for other groups to use to make natural highs a national program? Would it be something that could be trained to others who want a natural highs in their area?
Yes.
That's
So
compliment.
we it's like we get this request now more and more, and it's very beautiful, and we want that, right? So I have two ideas on that. Like I said, now because of COVID, we can bring natural highs to about any community online, and you can participate when we do parent nights now. And the way you get the connection, you need to sign up for our emails, naturalhighs.org with an S. You get our announcements. Most of them are free. You can participate in these online parent nights, and then you can go to your school district and say, we want that here in our school district, right? So that's a way to bring building blocks of natural highs into your community already. And then we are planning on doing a natural highs facilitator training at some point, probably next year, where we train professionals or teens or leaders in communities, activists, to learn how to bring natural highs into their communities, but you don't have to wait. You can just, like I said, sign up for our emails, participate in our programs, and then see how could we bring that into your community. We would love that.
And she's being so humble right now, but I know that Avani lost a lot of her funding due to COVID. So if you're in a place to donate, please donate. I promise you that it goes to like such a good place. I've benefited from their programs, and I'm like anti-program. Like, I don't want to do nothing. There's nothing wrong with me, but I've really benefited. And before we hang up, I want to say about the wisdom circle that you sometimes, is it once a month? You have a wisdom circle with older.
The philosophy circle.
Yeah. Can you tell the audience about that really quick?
So we have been running these philosophy circles for, like, at this point, 16 years. And it's a circle that is all centered around the yerba mate ritual that comes from Argentina. That is a beautiful way of connecting with something tangible, but not like a drug, like typically in our culture, people do with alcohol or marijuana or other things, but actually with an herb that is very healthy and very actually rebuilds neurotransmitters in our brain. And it's a beautiful ritual of bonding and connecting. And so we run these philosophy circles, and we run them for different purposes. We run them when we lose somebody to suicide in our community. When people are at very high risk, who are left behind, we run these philosophy circles to have a way of connecting and really gathering the wisdom and the support from each other in a very tangible way. And that is also a building block that we really want to bring into other communities. It's so powerful. It's a 1-hour format that can really, we've heard many times, change people's lives. And so if anybody's interested in that, it's challenging to do it online. We do it online now, right? But it's challenging. It's much better to do it in person. So if anybody's interested in learning that format, we would be happy to pass that on.
All right, so I would love to keep going, but I think we should, just for this, leave on a good note, because this has just been such a great conversation, like I knew it would be. So we have a lot of links in the comments. I saw Nicole post them, even the film, a lot about Boulder. Can you just share any closing thoughts that you have and your website one more time?
Yeah, so we would love for everybody to be connected with us. We have a whole series of online events coming up in the fall. One is on alcohol. We were part of a really famous documentary in Europe on alcohol, and I highly recommend this film to everybody. And we do it similar to the Medicating Normal format, where we show the film and then we have a community discussion online. Afterwards, you can be part of it. It's for free. We do a Turn Anxiety into Your Superpower coming up pretty soon. We're gonna, everybody. Yeah, that's really fun. Yeah. That's where you get the whole download neuroscience on trauma and anxiety, and everybody needs that right now for sure. We're going to do one on current drug trends among teens around the high THC issue and the mental health fallout, including psychosis from high THC. That is also, not taught really anywhere. We teach that to teens, to adults, to professionals. Let's see what else we do. We do Medicating Normal. I'm super excited about that. So I would say be an engaged human being, connect to these things, and tell your friends and tell people who are struggling. It is a ray of hope for people. And that is sometimes the thing that is needed to get people started on a journey of healing. And you can be that good human. We say to everybody, you can be that good friend that reaches out a hand to somebody who has a hard time getting up right now, is so depressed, doesn't see any hope. You be the friend that lends the hand and says, hey, come to this film showing with us. Let's do a little living room a movie night. We watch Medicating Normal together, and then we talk about it together afterwards. That could be that spark that you could do for another human. Do it for a teen in your community that you feel like is suffering. Do that for them. And it will also release your own serotonin to make you feel good.
Good point.
Yeah.
Just so that Nicole will put the link below, but the Medicating Normal screening with Avani, it's number 3. And she has an excellent MD psychiatrist named Libby Stout, who will be on the panel. Libby Stout. I'm so sorry. And I've met Libby in person too. She is amazing. She's retired, so she can say whatever she wants to say, which is the best. So Libby will be there, and their screening is on Wednesday, October 13th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is Denver time zone. The link is below. All right. So thank you, Avani. Oh my God, this was awesome. I can't wait to come visit.
I could hang out with you forever and just keep talking. It's so beautiful.
You just speak my language. I love it.
Yeah.
I love you. And you just inspire hope. I think that even me, who was harmed by meds and has little in the, I have so much medical trauma that I can't turn to the mental health profession anymore. So it's like, even I have benefited from things that you've said, especially, and I would be remiss without mentioning this. On Sundays, there's an ecstatic dance. It's called Golden Bridge. What is it called?
Movement Mass.
Oh, Movement Mass. That's it. Movement Mass. Nicole, please Google that and put the link up. But it's $10 or donation only. I don't know. It has nothing to do with Avani. She's just attended. But I attended it on Zoom, and it's people dancing in their living rooms with music playing, and this lady kind of takes you through it. And I just felt like I lost myself, and I've never done anything like that, and I never thought I would. But I got such a feeling of like hope from it. Like I saw these people from all over the world, Africa, New Zealand, just dancing and being in their bodies and just being free. And I don't know, I felt better that day. And to me, like any little thing that could help me feel better without, like a medication that could potentially harm me or have side effects, like that is a winning day for me. So please look into what Avani's saying. Okay, I'll shut up because I sound like I'm begging you, but I'm begging you. Okay. All right. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you haven't seen Medicating Normal yet, please check our website at medicatingnormal.com for a list of upcoming community screenings. We also have more interviews like this one coming up. We have Cindy Fisher. We have, oh my gosh, Melanie Davis from the UK and Iwis Aftab, a psychiatrist from the US. Those 3 are coming up in the next few weeks. If you have any ideas for other people that you want us to talk to, please email us at medicatingnormal@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our outreach efforts to bring films and conversations like this one, please consider a donation, and also consider a donation to Avani. Thank you so much for joining us today, Avani. You are the best, and you're doing such great things. And I can't even imagine how many lives you've touched and changed, especially teens when they're at that critical period, finding themselves. So thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for being who you are. Ish libadish. Which means Thank I love you,
Angie. And this is the thing, right? We need to recognize we're not alone. We are a movement, and we're gonna have to do it, and we have to turn this around, and everybody can be part of it. So it's you're gonna meet the coolest people like Angie, right? It's really, really a good thing to be part of. And it's not treacherous and sad. It's the opposite. It's learning about how to be a human. It's like there's no more exciting topic to me in the world than that, so it's a really fun thing to be part of. Thank you, Angie, so much for your work.
Thank you, guys. All right, I'm gonna say goodbye to our audience and just say thank you to Avani in private. So wait, let me figure out how to turn it off. Okay, here it is. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.